I know you've heard lots of tips and tricks and ideas about how to keep your plants alive. But what if I were to tell you there's one thing that's more important than all those other things? Welcome to my channel. I'm Cece with One Green Pea. Today, I'm going to talk about the one thing that you need to figure out to be able to keep your plants happy, healthy, and alive. That one thing, are you ready for it? That one thing is light. We all know that plants have an essential need for light. It's how they create their food through photosynthesis. But plants also have an innate preference for a certain amount of light. And if we can figure that out, then we are well on our way to creating a happy, healthy houseplant. Now today I'm going to talk about natural light, meaning the sun. It's the cheapest, easiest, and most accessible way of providing light for our plants. Overhead lights in your home really provide absolutely no benefit for your plants. If you really want to supplement your natural light, then you would need to use grow lights, which are full spectrum bulbs. And that's just a whole other discussion. We're going to stick to natural light today. The first thing that you need to figure out is the type of light that you can provide in your home. And to do that, you need to know what direction your windows face. There are a number of ways you can do that with a compass or with a map on your phone, but the very easiest way is to figure out where the sun is coming up. The windows that get the morning light from the sun coming up, those are facing east. And if I am facing the windows where the sun is coming up, the windows to my right are south, the windows to my left are north, and the windows behind me are west. Why is that important? Because let's think about the type of light that each window gets. North-facing lights get very little natural light at all. East-facing windows get that beautiful morning glow. South-facing windows get an all-day sort of steady amount of light, and then west-facing windows get pretty intense direct light. Now let's define some other terms that we see floating around as well in terms of light. Bright indirect light would be a plant that is sitting in an east-facing window or in a shaded south-facing window or 1 to 3 feet away from a south or west-facing window. Direct light would be a plant that is in either a south or west-facing window that is getting direct rays from the sun. And low light is a plant that is either in a north-facing window or 1 to 3 to 5 to infinity feet away from an east, west, or south-facing window. So understanding all of that, now we need to know which plants prefer what type of light. Before I dive into giving you plant lists, I want to talk about a couple of things. Adaptation, number one. Adaptation means that a plant can actually adapt to a fairly wide variety of light situations. Now, can a cactus adapt to low light? Probably not, because we're talking two ends of the spectrum. But the majority of our plants, if we think of it in terms of a bell curve, right? There are some plants that prefer low light, some plants that prefer direct light. The great majority of our plants are here in the middle of this bell curve, and they would appreciate bright, indirect light. Those are the plants that are going to be adaptable to a wide variety of light situations. And so I want you to not take any rule absolutely verbatim. Perhaps a plant prefers one type of light, but you can help it to adapt to another situation. First, let's talk about plants that appreciate direct light, because that's really the simplest. It's pretty cut and dry. Your succulents and your cactus are the plants that really crave direct rays of sun for the majority of the day. So 6+ hours of the day, they want light that's coming in from a south or a west facing window. If you start to notice a plant is suffering from too much light, you can see that these leaves on this succulent here are starting to fade out, getting a little yellow. They're getting too much light, and they also have kind of some red tone to them. That's called sun stress. Now, some people like that, and some people actually work to get that in their succulents. To me, it just means that that plant is getting too much light. And so I want to be sure to rotate the plant. And on the other hand, if they're not getting enough light, what they're going to do is, it's called etiolate, meaning they're going to stretch. They're going to get really long. They're basically reaching for the sun that they need so much. And when the plant looks like that, it's not an attractive look. And it simply means you need to move that plant into a place where it's going to get more sun for a longer duration. The second category would be plants that tolerate or prefer lower light. And I am specific about those two words because they're really actually very important. There are some plants that prefer lower light, and those would be, say, your ferns or plants with really wispy leaves. Your calathea, this rattlesnake calathea, sits on my bathtub. It's actually just below a window, and it gets enough indirect light that it's very happy, still producing new leaves and has great coloration. So I know that it's doing well. Now, there are also plants that simply tolerate lower light. They might prefer a little more light, say bright indirect, but they tolerate lower light. Let me show you a few of those. One of the plants that tolerates lower light, that's well known for that, is the ZZ plant. This is the Zenzi variety, so it's a smaller variety, and these plants do remarkably well in low light situations. Another plant that might be surprising that tolerates low light is the Rex begonia. What I have found through much experimentation is that they really prefer a little bit less light, so shaded light. Most of my Rex begonias now are probably 4 to 6 feet away from a south-facing window and are all doing quite well. In fact, let me show you another one. This guy is way over there, so I'm gonna guess 10-ish feet away from this south-facing window. And in fact, it's behind a whole bunch of other plants. And it's absolutely beautiful. New leaves all the time and great coloration. So Rex begonia is another good choice. Another one, others that I've talked about a lot would be spider plants and pothos. My eternal favorite, the pothos, tolerates very low light. I have pothos downstairs in my great room on bookshelves that are quite far away from windows and still just finding and doing really well. I'm going to do a whole separate video on low light tolerant and preferring plants, just because it is an issue that so many of us face, that our homes don't always have ideal light for all of the plants that we want to have, and so it's nice to have some options. And the final category of light would be the bright indirect. Which plants prefer bright indirect light? All the rest of them, virtually all the rest of your tropical plants, your ficus plants, your monstera, your philodendrons, dracaenas. I'm just looking around my room and pretty much everyone, that's what they want. The snake plants, the aloe plants, everybody else really prefers bright indirect light. Remember, what that means is sitting in an east-facing window or within 1 to 3 feet of an east or south-facing window. Again, remember, adaptation is possible. I have an aloe plant that is 10 to 12 feet away from a south-facing window, and it's putting out pups and growing all the time. Now, understand if you don't have a plant in the ideal light situation, it might live, it might still grow, it will just grow more slowly. So maybe that's ideal for you. Maybe you don't want all of your plants to grow abundantly and gigantic into pieces of furniture. Then you can put them in lower light situations. So every rule is meant to be bent, I suppose. A couple of last tips in terms of light. Number one, work with what you have. Very few homes have an ideal light situation for every plant. And if you do have wonderful south-facing windows, maybe you don't have enough of them for all of the plants that you want. So work with what you have. Rotate your plants in and out of ideal light situations. Raise plants up on stands or blocks or pieces of furniture so that they have an eyeball view of the window. All of that being said, buy plants for the home situation that you have. Meaning, if you have all east and north facing windows, probably don't start collecting succulents and cactus plants unless you want to supplement their light. And if your home is super bright, then probably not the right place for ferns or calathea that prefer lower light. A really, really important factor in all of this is your watering depends on how much light your plant is getting. A plant that is in direct light is going to need more water than a plant that is a lot farther away from the light source. So my aloe that's way over there in the corner does not need watered near as often as the aloe plant that I have downstairs that's about 3 feet away from a south-facing window. So adjust accordingly. We hear often that the easiest way to kill your plants is overwatering. And I would say it's more likely that the problem is not enough light than too much water. So adjust your watering based on the light that your plants are getting. And my final tip before I leave you is this. Don't take anybody's word as absolutely fact. Test for yourself. You never know if you can keep a plant in more light than the book says, right? And very often the little sticks that we get in the plants that we buy say bright indirect light, and maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Test it out for yourself. Be your own experiment and just pay attention to your plants. They will let you know. Thank you so much for watching my video, my plant friends. If you liked it, remember, please give it a thumbs up, and I would love if you subscribe to my channel so you can join our plant community. As always, dear plant friends, let's keep growing together a greener world.